30 years old, second baby, living in the projects. 30 years old, second baby, living in the projects. Angrier than I've ever been in my life. Like, my anger couldn't get any worse than what it was, but it did. And I remember my aunt, like this particular aunt, when I was in the 8th grade, I had actually tried to move in with her and my uncle. She had 2 boys, and I was like the daughter that she never had. And I couldn't tell her why I wanted to move in with her. I just asked her, could I move in with her? And she laughed and told me no, but she's always been like a constant presence in my life. It's kind of like she took over as far as where mama left off as far as a relationship with God. I was able to see God through both of my aunt's lenses. The aunt that I ended up living with when I got put out when I graduated from high school, and then this particular aunt. And I remember her taking me to a church. And she took me to this church, and I thought they was crazy. This pastor was walking over the pews and touching people and praying for people. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I thought it was strange because I had never seen anything like that before. My oldest daughter, she was eating it up. She could tell you verbatim what he was talking about because she was so intrigued with the ministry. And I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, we went to a Sunday service, and he preached so, and I can't even tell you what he preached about, but it was like there was not, this is the feeling that I had. I had a feeling that there was nobody else in that church but me, and he was talking directly to me. And I remember, I'm big, fat, and pregnant. And I remember dragging my aunt up to the altar, and I screamed and I hollered and I hollered and I screamed and I screamed. And we were on the floor, and we were rolling on the floor, and I'm big, fat, and pregnant because I just didn't know. I just didn't know what my life was about to look like. I had no clue. I had no money. I I was depressed. Her her father left me for somebody else. Then come to find out that the person that he left me for, they had a baby prior to me getting pregnant. So there was a baby, then my baby, then they had 2 more. I When I tell you I hated myself, I hated myself so bad. I couldn't stand to look at myself in the mirror. That's how much I hated me. I dressed up. I dressed up. When I would go to my daughter's elementary school, I was dressed up almost every day. My hair was done, and I wore a face full of makeup because I hated what I saw. Like the makeup and the clothes and the hair for me was a cover up. And it was literally just a band aid covering up a huge wound that was. This wound was growing and it was getting bigger. And how could it get any bigger? The continual trauma and damage that I endured even as an adult, the damage that I inflicted on myself because I put myself in positions to end up how things ended up. Like, oh boy. So I joined this church, and yeah, I joined this church, and before I had my daughter, a really good friend of mine, I didn't have a car. She gave me $750, and I went and bought myself this little bucket, this Toyota Camry, and I was in that church every time the door was open because I was trying to figure out all of this pain and all of this hatred and what was I going to do with it. And I didn't want to continue to carry it, and I didn't want to continue to hold it, but I was drowning in it. I was drowning in it. I was dying, and I was about to have another baby, and I was about to inflict all of that trauma onto this newborn baby. It was so bad that after I had her for almost 6 months, my aunt had to move in because I couldn't take care of that baby. I couldn't take care of myself, and I couldn't take care of my 10-year-old. And I have a cousin, I call her Foxy Roxy. I thank God for her because she made sure that my oldest daughter got back and forth to school. When I was so in a deep, dark, black hole, I couldn't, I just, there was no light. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. None. None whatsoever. And I was dying. I was sitting in the church, dying. You know, the one thing I I for I forgot to share is when my oldest daughter was 4. Um, I dated somebody back in high school, off and on, off and on, off and on. I started messing with him briefly, um, and he sold drugs. And in high school, I got high, and I drank, and I got high, and I drank, and I got high to numb the pain. And no, Camp Courtney wasn't 4; she was a newborn. Um, she was a newborn, and I dated this guy and was getting high. She was 4 months old, and I had gotten so high. Now he and I are smoking the same thing, but I literally felt myself in that bathroom dying, and I I started hollering and screaming, and I felt like my head was about to bust wide open because of what I was smoking. And I told God that day, if you bring me out of that, I'll never get high again. And I never looked back. I never got high again. So when I joined church, when I had this second baby, I knew that God brought me out of the situation when Courtney was a baby. So I knew that if I could just muster up enough strength to talk to God, give it to God, just like He had brought me out before, He would bring me out again. And um, I was in a dark hole for a long time in church. And then I started in the church. I started working like when my second baby was I can't remember how many months old she was. You know, she was probably about 6 or 7 months. I remember going to a meeting because we were having a women's conference, and I always kept to myself and sat by myself. And I sat in the back, and the first lady called me out and asked me to move up front because she wanted me to be one of her workers. And that's when the first time I ever got really, really, really involved in church and actually working. And my time at this particular ministry was maybe 6 or 7 years before the ministry fell apart. But I was a greeter, I was a nurse. Um, I did anything and everything, met some beautiful people in this ministry, some women. We were all single, we all hung around. Um, it was a really, so things for me seemed better on the surface. That while I was in that ministry, I had tried to start 2 different businesses that didn't work. And I still wanted love. Like, and what was so crazy, I didn't love myself. I didn't love me, but I wanted somebody to love me. And I dated 2 different gentlemen in the ministry. One, it went nowhere. One I dated, I think maybe for 2 years. I think we were in a relationship for 2 years, maybe. And that's the one who got away. And you talking about going back. If I could go back and change the hand of time, I would have never left him. I was a woman who just did not understand. I didn't know what love looked like. Didn't understand it. I had never been loved, didn't love me. So I didn't know what real love looked like. And he was amazing. Um, he's happily married today, and he's living in Virginia somewhere. But that's the one that got away. That's the one that got away. If I could have gotten help for myself back then, I would have gotten married then and I would still be married because, yeah, I'll never have another one like him. Never, never. He was amazing. He really was amazing. Um, I didn't understand my brokenness. I didn't understand my pain. I didn't understand that I hate. I didn't want to accept the fact that I didn't love myself. That I hated myself. It was just so much about me. I just didn't get. And the years is going by. I have this now. I have two kids and still no real career. Didn't finish college. Odds and end jobs. Um, I worked for the school system at one time, and I should have just stayed, and I didn't. And then I it gets better. So now I'm 38, and I run into somebody that I had a crush on in high school. Now, this guy never paid any attention to me in high school. So at the time, I'm working for a friend's business. They had a business. It was a group of friends of mine. They had a business. I was working for them. I run into a gentleman who I have a crush on in high school. Now, in the midst of this, right, my friend who owns the business comes to me and tells me he loves me. And I'm like, oh, I love you too. Like, just nonchalantly, like, oh, I love you too. And he was like, no, you don't understand. I love you. And I have loved you. Kind of threw me off. I laughed. Oh, I love you too. And he said it again. No, no. I love you, want to be with you, love you. Now, he was married. And and I told him, I was like, you married? I'm not doing that. And so um, we're separated. I sleep on the couch. We're getting a divorce. And I thought to myself, who better to be with than my friend? We've been friends for years. Like, never crossed the line, was just friends. Like, okay. So I start messing with this guy. But I run into this other guy that I had a crush on in high school. Now, the guy that I run into that I have a crush on in high school, he scares me. And he scares me because I'm at work. He calls me to see if I've eaten. He brings me food. He checks up on me. He makes sure I'm good. The very first time he ever came to my apartment. Now, I've always been the type of person, I don't have to have, especially when I started living on my own, I wasn't the type of person that I was just going to buy any type of furniture just to have it. I wasn't going to do the rent to own stuff. I have good taste. I wanted what I wanted, and I would do without until I could get what I wanted. So I had already purchased this dining room table and chairs, and it was amazing. But I didn't have a couch. I didn't have a couch. I didn't have a living room TV. I had beds and TVs in the bedroom, stuff like that, but I didn't have anything in the living room. So when the gentleman came to my apartment, he I could hear him talking, like assessing my place, and he was like, "Oh, okay. So she needs living room furniture. She needs a TV in the living room," and that scared me because I've never met anybody who wanted to do for me in that manner. Now, I'm few years prior, I dated a really good guy, but he wasn't coming through assessing my needs. He was just a really good guy, and he was in the church. But this guy's coming in assessing my needs, right? So we hang out, whatnot. We sleep together. I get pregnant. But the problem is, I'm sleeping with my friend too. I have no idea who the father is of my third baby. So I take matters into my own hands because I'm not doing this to myself. I'm not doing this to myself. Nobody knows, right? Because I'm not telling a soul, not a single soul. I'm working at the hospital. I got a good job. I can handle this myself. So, what I decided to do, I go way up in the North End to an abortion clinic, and I go and I have an abortion. Well, I do what's called a medical abortion because the abortion that I had years ago, when I first met my second child's father, I got really, really sick. And I remember they had to turn me upside down, and my head was like on the floor. I was on this board, and they had to leave me like that for 30 minutes. So I didn't want to do that to myself again. So I had what was called a medical abortion, when you insert these pills in your vagina and it throws your body into an abortion. Well, they give me the whole spiel of what's going to happen and what it's going to look like and everything. And I had to make an appointment, of when to come back to be checked, the whole 9 yards. Everything that the doctor told me was going to happen happens, right? Okay. So it's Mother's Day. Now, I've been done the abortion stuff. It's Mother's Day. It's myself, my mom, my stepmom, my sister. We're all over my dad's. My dad is cooking for all of us for Mother's Day, right? My mother says, I had a dream of fishes. And she said, somebody's pregnant. Well, me, knowing what I had did, because nobody in my family knew, I held this secret. I knew what I had done. I was like, well, it ain't me. So I looked at my sister. I said, it must be you. She was like, it ain't me. So this was Mother's Day. At the end of May, I had to go back to have I guess like a consultation. They had to check me, right? A checkup. And so they do the checkup, and the lady is like, mm. She's like, I'll be back. And I was like, okay. So she comes back and she tells me that I need to go have a different exam. So I said, okay. So she takes me into this room, and they have it set up like somebody's getting ready to get a pap smear. And I'm thinking, who in the heck is getting ready to get a pap smear? I'm so oblivious. And I'm 38, and I'm still oblivious. Like, all of this is just going over my head, right? And so I get up on the gurney like I'm having this pap smear. They put this wand with this condom up my vagina, and she says, just as I thought, and walks out the room. I get dressed. She comes back in. She was like, the doctor needs to talk to you. Okay. So I go out. Why did this doctor tell me I was still pregnant? I about hit the floor. I was devastated. And she told me, she said, you have to come back and schedule this abortion. She said, you have to do a medical abortion, a surgical abortion. I'm sorry. Not only that, I walk out into the lobby and I run into my sister's ex boyfriend. Now, I'm way out in Timbuktu thinking I'm hiding because I don't want nobody to know I didn't had this abortion. And here I didn't run into my sister's ex boyfriend. I was just done. I was done. And I mean, I was done. Cooked me like a steak done. So I go to my car and I call my aunt, the one who got me in church. And I asked her to run some errands with me. She said, okay. But she ended up calling me back. And she said that she had to do something and she wanted me to just come over briefly. And she hung up. Well, the one thing about this particular aunt, when I tell you she had a relationship with God, she talked to God and God definitely talked to her. Okay? They was tight. Tight. And I was like, I do not want to go over here and sit. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in the car, driving, moving, listening to music, because I didn't want God telling her nothing, because nobody knew nothing, right? So I get over to her house and she asked me, did I want something to eat? And I told her, yeah. So she fixed me breakfast. She hands me the plate and then she tells me, she said, the Holy Spirit told me you've got something to tell me. And I thought, here we go. This is what I didn't want. I eat, I lay down, and I go to sleep. And I mention nothing about the abortion. She don't say nothing to me either. So when I wake up, I'm just sitting there. And I knew she knew something was up. And I just bust out into tears. I started crying. And I told her. I told her that I had an abortion and that I was just leaving the clinic and I found out that I was still pregnant. What she said to me next, I did not like and I did not want to hear. And she told me, she said, the Holy Spirit told me to tell you that if you go back and have that abortion, they're going to bring you out in a body bag. And then she told me, she said, and this is the son that you've always wanted. And I bust out into tears. Now, mind you, depression, anger, hatred for people, myself, situations that I didn't ask for, I still wasn't over, situations that I had gotten myself into that was my own fault that I hadn't got over. Now you mean to tell me I'm pregnant with a boy and I've always wanted a boy? This was the ultimate kicker though of the information. I worked at Children's Hospital at the time, and I worked on the NIC unit. And there was a night, one particular night, that the nurses was talking about a woman who was married, and she had 5 kids. This woman did the exact same abortion that I did, right? And everything that the doctor told me that would be wrong with my son is wrong with that lady's son. I went into that baby's room to see that baby, and I swear to you, I didn't think I could hate myself any more than what I did, because when I looked at that baby, all I could think of is, what did I do to my baby? So now I'm seeing a specialist, and I'm going quite often to see this specialist, because I'm not going to have the surgical abortion. I know what happened the last time I did it, and I could not put my body through that again. That's why I didn't do it in the first place. I did the medical abortion with my third pregnancy. And I'm going to see this specialist, and I'm going to see this specialist. And on top of the fact, I don't know whose baby this is. I'm no longer now seeing the guy who I had to crush on. I'm still seeing the guy who's married. So I eventually get cleared that he's healthy. So I have him in December. When he comes out, I immediately knew who the father was. And it was the guy who I'd always had a crush on. He didn't even know I was pregnant. So the guy that I was friends with, he came up to the hospital. He knew that my son was not his baby. He knew there was nothing about my son that resembled him at all. And I was done. I was too fit to be tied. So now I got 3 kids. I got one is 18, graduating high school. One is 8, and now I have a newborn. I'm 38. I've got 3 kids by 3 different men. No career. Didn't finish college. At this time, I'm now living in my father's condo. I have no idea which way my life is going. None. None whatsoever. I didn't think I could hate myself more than how I hated myself. I mean, I did everything that my mother did to me and then some. My biological mother. I was worse than her. I created turmoil and dysfunction and kept my kids. it was just an utter, utter mess. It was just mess on top of mess, on top of dysfunction, on top of dysfunction. Before I gave birth, things were so bad that my boss called me into the office and told me, you either go get help or you lose your job. That's how bad that I was in such bad shape, and that's how bad it was. My boss threatened me, told me to go get help or lose my job, because that's how angry I was. I never wanted this for my life. I never wanted this for my life. I never saw myself not being married. I never wanted 3 kids by 3 different men. My kids, I had them at 20, 30, and 38. I, I just wanted love. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted somebody to love me. I wanted somebody to love me enough to marry me. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And things got worse. I had my son. I eventually got in touch with his father. And I was 6 months too late, because he had just got into a relationship 6 months prior to me contacting him. And but he stepped up to the plate. He was there for my son. He has been the whole way through and through. And amazing man, amazing father. He and I have a really good relationship. He's married now, and my son's bonus mom has been good to my son. Today, my son is getting ready to turn 19 in a couple weeks, and yeah, and it was a ride. And then I'm in a different church, and I'm going to a friend of mine's church. I'm in a different church now, and I'm at a friend of mine's church, and she's a first lady, and her husband is a pastor. And I got my 2 kids in tow, and we going to church, and um, there was a unlikely suspect. My son is now 2, and I'm not dating anybody, and I'm 40. Now I'm 40. You never believe what happened. You never believe what happened. You'll never believe what I did when I turned 40.